Hello, my name is Leah Kathleen Sen, and today I'll be doing my hero talk for Professor Hill's class. My chosen hero is Quasimodo from Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This character, I chose him specifically for a couple different reasons, but one of them, also, if this is too loud, let me turn it down. It's some Hunchback of Notre Dame ambiance. Figured it'd give some little fun character to the talk. If I'm wrong, sorry. I chose this character for a multitude of reasons. One being, when I was little, I was really obsessed with this movie. I don't know why, but I just was. And then I found out, I got a little bit older, my aunt, my mom's sister, was really obsessed with this movie. And I think it was because my grandfather was 100% full-blooded gypsy. And so my aunt, when she was little, was really obsessed with Esmeralda. But then as we got older, we realized she's not a real gypsy or whatever. So by that point, we'd kind of faded in our interest. But when we were little, we were like, oh, this is us. But we're a little whiter than she is, so we don't actually look like her. But it was really fun for us to see any kind of gypsy in media or something like that, because it's not in the media very often. Regardless of that, my chosen hero is Quasimodo. And there's a couple other characters I could have chosen from, but he just seemed, I'd never really dove into him before, and I really feel like it would have been a little bit more interesting for me personally if I could take a step back and really look at him for what he was and not just his character that I liked when I was little. So there are a couple different characters that are important to the story, one being Quasimodo, and he has a couple different physical qualities that make him a little bit, he's described as grotesque a couple times. But he's always been super nice. He's never had anyone who knows him as like such the priest knows that he's not grotesque of heart. He's just a little hard to look at. And then you have Frodo, who is his character's a little bit different in the movie, and then in the book, Esmeralda, which in the book she was described as a little French girl that was kidnapped by the gypsy people and raised as one of them. In the movie, there's a little less, it's less insinuated, I guess. But if you do look into it, the Disney version does admit that she is they call her French Roma girl. Either way, she was a young girl in all medias. In the movie, I believe she was 16, and I do believe she was around 16 in the book as well. And Quasimodo's about 19. He's a little bit older than there's Phoebus, and he is like, he kind of works with Frodo a lot. He's in like the military or whatever you want to call that. He's just in that group of people, and he kind of just listens to the church and he goes, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go do this. And so Phoebus kind of just listens and does whatever he's told to do. So basically those are our most important characters for the most part. The story pretty much starts is during the Festival of Fools, because Quasimodo he's been living in the bell tower for 20 years of his life, and he's been being told that he's evil and gross just because of the way he looks. And so he doesn't know any better. He almost has no ego at all. He thinks he's worth absolutely nothing because Frodo's told him nothing but that since the day he was born. And he's been kept as a burden in this tower. And in both the movie, in the book, it's a little bit more disheartening and vivid, if you will. And in the movie, obviously, it's been a little dumbed down just because children did watch it. But even for a Disney movie in the 90s, it's pretty dark. And so he's been told all these things, and he's led to believe that he is worth nothing, that he's gross, and that he doesn't deserve to be with the people. And in the book, it's made very clear that these gargoyles and these statues of Notre Dame are, in the book, it's made very clear that he's talking to statues, but that these spirits of these statues are watching over him. And but in the movie, because it's a children's movie, it's made to seem as though they're real but nobody else can see them. But then again, they're supposed to be these big scary eyes of Notre Dame that are taking care of him in a way. But he eventually goes down to the Festival of Fools because he's been looking and he's been watching and he's been wanting to for years, and it's his favorite day of the year, and Frodo's been telling him, you can't go down there. No one can see you. But there is this rumor going around that says, oh, there's the Hunchback of Notre Dame, because I mean, every now and then you'll see him up there ringing the bells. They don't know who else rings the bells, so they're like, oh, there's this creature, and it just so happens to have been true, but to a fault, because the belief is that there's this horrible, evil, truly like heinous creature up there ringing these bells, keeping watch over the city of Paris, and that's just not true. He was slightly grotesque, that's what they continue to describe him as, but he wasn't evil of heart. He wasn't this creature that they keep continuing to call him. But no, he eventually goes down to the Festival of Fools, where he meets Esmeralda for the first time, because she's dancing around having like a jolly good time, and he just kind of falls in love with her like immediately. He's like, oh, this is the girl for me. He's just kind of watching her, and obviously he's not being seen, because of the Festival of Fools you're supposed to look scary and you're supposed to look stupid and you're all these things. So then this is where I'm veering more into the movie section. She pulls him up on stage, and he wins the in the book it's the Pope of Fools, in the movie it's the King of Fools, and he wins, and they pull him up on stage and they realize that's what he looks like. He's not this it's not a mask, that he genuinely looks like that. And then Frodo then sees him. He's like, okay, so you lied to me, you told me that you weren't going to go down here, and you did it anyways. This is what you get. And so then the crowd turns on him, and they pretty much just berate him and beat him up. In the book, it's much more horrific. They like beat him to a pulp. And in the movie, they just kind of, which is still pretty horrific, they tie him down and they throw food at him and they're yelling obscenities, and it's just really not cool at all. And Esmeralda sees this both in the book and the thing. In the book, it's a little slightly different, and in the movie, as I keep mentioning, and in the movie, she goes, this isn't right. Like, you don't like me for whatever reason, so I don't believe that you don't like him for the same good reason. You know what I mean? I don't know why you don't like me. There's probably a reason you don't like him, but I think it's a little bit more obvious. Just kind of that judging a book by its cover thing, that just because you look this way means you must act this way. You must be that inside, and that's just not the truth. And so she saves him, and in the book she gives him a glass of water, and she takes pity on him like she does in the movie, but she doesn't give him water in the movie, because the glass of water is a big point in the book, and that's the first time anyone's ever really been nice to him, other than when he was born. And the priest was like, you can't, like, he's a child of God, you can't do away with him, as Frodo wanted to do, because his mother was a gypsy, and so his mother died of unnatural causes. And so Frodo's been having to raise him. He didn't want to, and so he's been told all these things, and then so Esmeralda sees that, and she feels that unwantedness, and so for the first time in his life, he's being treated like a human being, as if he's something more than this gross gargoyle that has been put up by the bells. And so for the first time in his life, he goes, oh, like I can do something else. And from that point on, he decides to devote his life to her and saving her, because she's the only person who's ever been nice to him. So he ends up kind of being what I would call a tragic hero, because his story in the movie is slightly different than the book, and in the movie he does get a happy ending. Not really, but in the book he does tragically meet his untimely death, because throughout the story he continues to betray Frodo, who in this is kind of his adopted father figure, even though it was never really a good one. And he continues to betray, strong use of the word, everything he's ever known, to jump in front of Esmeralda for her danger. She runs away because Frodo decides that, oh, so you're gonna defend him, I'm gonna kill you too. And so then they run away into into Notre Dame. And she's like, I'm seeking sanctuary, you can't touch me. And during this time of sanctuary, she runs into Phoebus. And Phoebus is like, hey, pretty lady, I want you. And she goes, okay. And sorry, that was stupid. And so they kind of, he's trying to get with her. And so Frodo finds them in a closet. And he sees Phoebus kiss her. And he kind of just goes into this blind rage. Because as much as he hates her for being a gypsy, he sees her beauty. And he sees her womanhood. Whatever you want to call that. I call it creepy because she's 16 and he's like 50. But whatever. And he's like, well, and his whole thing with Esmeralda is, if you come home with me and you be my thing, you be my wife per se, I won't kill you. You'll be fine, you'll be protected. But she's like, so no. But anyways, Frodo finds them and he attempts to kill Phoebus. And they both end up getting, Phoebus and Esmeralda end up getting knocked out. And then upon Esme's awakening, she finds out that, or she thinks that she killed Phoebus. Or not that she killed Phoebus, but she thinks Phoebus is dead. And this is the book. And so Frodo lets her think that, and lets her think that somehow it's her fault and that there's witchcraft involved, because of course gypsies were involved in witchcraft or whatever. And so he really just kind of lets her fall as far as she can fall for telling him no. And this is when Quasi really kind of steps into that protection mode. He helps her in the sanctuary. He makes sure that she has company. And that's for the first time he really steps up to Frodo and is like, no, you're wrong. She's not doing anything wrong. You're incorrect. And for someone like Quasi, that is an insanely dangerous thing to do, but again, heroic, and just to the fact that he said no when he had everything to lose. It also depends on what you consider everything. Anything that he was used to, he was gonna lose it. But basically, the story goes on, and eventually Esmeralda gets handed over by Frodo to the Parisians, and they hang her on the steps of the church. And so Quasi, obviously his heart's broken because he's in love with her. He is in love with Esmeralda and everything she could possibly do. And there's a quote that goes, if he could give her the city, if he had Peru in his pocket, he would give it to the dancer. He would do anything for her, so much to the fact that he literally dedicated his life to her, to saving and protecting her. And so even though he could not protect her in life any further than he had tried, because she does end up dying, he gets on top of Notre Dame on the cathedral with Frodo, and he throws Frodo over the side of the freaking cathedral, and he dies, obviously. In the movie it's slightly different, he falls, but in the book he throws him. So he throws Frodo off the side of the cathedral, and then he disappears. No one knows where he went. He's become this people talk about him in myths years and years later, that whether or not it actually happened, or just, how the story of humans continues and changes and evolves. And eventually they find him years later, and this is how the book ends, which I find actually really dazzling. They find his skeleton intertwined with Esmeralda's in her tomb, which is slightly creepy, but I think in tune to the fulfilling his prophecy that he created for himself, I think it's beautiful. And that of Esmeralda was not in love with Quasi. She never was. If anything, she was in love with Phoebus, as much as one could be in love with anybody. And but they were friends. He was so intertwined in her life that he lived from the moment he met her to the days that he died. He sacrificed himself for her. And whether or not that was the way that, he did everything in his power to continue to keep her safe even after death. And so there's a quote, and it goes, when they tried to detach the skeleton which he held in his embrace, he fell to dust. And then right before that, that's the last line. And then right before that, they explain that she had a cracked vertebrae in her neck, so it shows that she was hung. But his didn't. He died of old age. He died in the, or not of old age. He died in the tomb, laying next to her, starving himself and not drinking anything, and just however you would die from that, that is how he died. He died literally hugging her dead body, and then brought it away in her tomb with her. And as odd as you might say that, I mean, not the like, that's the greatest way to die, but I think in his story and his purpose, that was the best way it could have possibly gone, because in some way or another, he fulfilled his prophecy that I keep using. But he did. He did everything in his possible power to continue to keep her safe even after death, so that she would never be alone again. There's the argument of what is purity? Does murder blind that, or is it just what he had to do to get to where he ended up? And I think it's kind of the second one, that it wasn't, because Frodo was so full of evil, truly. And even in the movie, it explains that his Hellfire song, there's a whole line that goes something along the lines of, "You made Satan so much like a man." And in the book, it insinuates that Frodo could be Satan, that he is this evil thing. That, and so pure versus this heinous evil, I don't seem to think that it taints it much. Because he did it, even in death, he's still protecting Esme. He has this, I mean, this hero's journey, or whatever you want to say. He has this innate want and longing to fill this prophecy or whatever, to protect Esme. And even though she's dead, he's fulfilling that in any way that he can. And because he's devoted his life to hers, because she was nice to him. And I think that really shows the purity of his character, because to be a true hero, you have to be pure of heart. You have to have a clear mind. You have to, I mean, you're allowed to have struggles and all these things. Like he's really dealing with his idea of self-worth throughout the entire story until he dies. But he finds his self-worth in his ability to protect Esmeralda. So for this project, this talk, I dove a little bit into both, simply because there's not a lot of already deep insight on the book for the most part. So there's a lot more research done already on the movie. So I did both. I read most of the novel by Victor Hugo, and then the updated version, as well as the older original version that I could find. And then I did watch the movie 2 or 3 times, and I did a little bit of research on the musical, because there's 3 versions of this story out there that are as popular as one would find such media on. So then in my outline, I go through a lot of this more cohesively. And then I go through, I have 8 quotes I chose, and then I add the explanation and the relation to why that makes him a tragic hero, and why those quotes intertwine with his story so well. The question of how he influenced that filmmaker, or the writer, or musician, I think he influenced them in a quieter way, less than like, obviously, like the Lord of the Rings, which influenced literally everything to become what it is. I think it influenced the public more so, that the don't judge a book by its cover thing, and just because you're full of Christianity or you are feigning Christianity does not mean that you are good. And that just because you look a certain way and you're being told that they're full of this evil does not mean that they are evil, and that they could in fact be the exact opposite, which I think is exactly what Quasimodo was. I don't think he was evil. I think maybe a screw or two was loose, just because of the long list of deformities he had. But just because being deformed, that doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't make you, it doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you evil. And I think that narrative has insanely been placed into the life that we now live. It's in a lot of stories. It's in a lot of movie shows and theater, and like it's in everything. I mean, look at Beauty and the Beast. He was once bad, but then he was bad looking, but then he wasn't evil by the end of it. And then he was better. Like, you can take it and chop it up and put it in different pieces, but the story's the same. I think that covers most of what I had to say out loud. If there are any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm glad to debate. I don't ever think that I'm completely right. And I'm sure I'm not ever, but this is just mostly my opinion and what I've researched and how I feel about what I read and researched. And a lot more goes in, like I said earlier, it goes into depth in my outline. So thank you for listening to me yap for 23 minutes. Thank you.